Hello, this is Wmpyr. Okay, the purpose of this video is I want to make my most comprehensive wrenching video as to date. So let me go ahead and get started. First thing is, the very first wrenching technique that I learned was back in 1990, and my instructor had combined mainly three different styles, right? One was Couture, and then the other one was Arnis, Filipino martial arts, and then number three was full contact fighting. So he pretty much combined those three. It was a hybrid style, and what he taught us, I believe it was from the Couture part, okay? And it was this, the guy throws a punch, you block it, grab it, and you, right here, you hit him right on the elbow, so you make his arm straight, and you are striking right here. It could be with the forearm, or it could be a palm strike right on the arm. And yeah, that is the first wrenching technique. It wasn't called wrenching, but that's the first wrenching type of technique that I learned, that I had ever experienced. And one thing that I got to say about this is that I remember, so he, from my understanding, cherry-picked from Couture, which has hundreds of techniques, and he picked, like, let's say it was 5 joint locks, and then I remember him telling us that all the locks are throws, all the throws are locks. So he picked like 5 locks and then 5 throws. And to me, that was very important, that all the locks are throws, all the throws are locks, because later on, when I was trying to understand wrenching, when I was trying to really understand for the purpose of lock flow, because that's what we do in Filipino martial arts. We do a drill called lock flow. And in order to understand that, I was like, why don't we see this stuff in full contact? Why don't we see this stuff in MMA? And the idea of all the locks are throws, all the throws are locks, stuck with me, and it came back to me, and I was like, that's because the locks need to be done quickly, like a throw. Okay, so that was a huge hint for me. But anyway, that was way later. But right now, let me start with the first, and that's the first. The second one was in college, okay, and this comes from Sifu Paul Vunak when I was watching his Jeet Kune Do video. So he starts off with boom, that kind of technique, right? Boom, bam, right here. This is the move. This is, he actually called it an arm wrench. And the beginning motion right here, this is the trap, and you could slip in that uppercut, but this was called an arm wrench. And when I saw that, when I saw Sifu Paul Vunak's Jeet Kune Do, I was like, wow, this is the way Jeet Kune Do is applied. And I was super impressed by it at the time. I still am today. And that arm wrench was something that I was like, that is so powerful looking. That is so effective looking. I immediately wanted that in my arsenal, and I have been practicing it to this day. So that's arm wrench number 2. Arm wrench number 3. Arm wrench number 3 is another thing that I was super into, aside from the Jeet Kune Do trapping, because that crosses over with the Filipino martial arts hubad, because we also have trapping type techniques in Filipino martial arts. And I was desperately trying to understand that so that I personally could do it in full contact and use it against the people that I was going up against. But anyway, another thing I was super into was bunkai from karate, and that is the breakdown of, you know, you're doing all these movements and the kata, the form stuff, and it was the practical application of what those movements meant, and that's called bunkai, the breaking down of and going deep diving into those movements. And one of the moves was this, what is traditionally called the upwards block, right? So one of the bunkais I saw was to grab the hand right here, the wrist, and do this. So that was the upwards block. and it was basically a wrench. And I was like, that's an arm wrench. And so I added it to my arsenal, and it's been with me this whole time. This was back in college, so this was still like early to mid 90s, right? So let me go over those three again. The very first one in 1990 was the Couture, or that's where I learned it from, arm wrench. Okay, that's number one. Number two was the Jeet Kune Do arm wrench. And then number three is the karate arm wrench. Okay, so those are the three that I definitely would like to share with you guys. But then keep in mind, like 1993 was the first UFC. And then after watching that, I was like, I need to do that. I need to experience that kind of thing. So I was lucky in college, or dumb, either way, that I got to experience mixed martial arts. But by mixed martial arts, that it's not I get this style, this style, this style, and now we fight. No, mixed martial arts meant to me was that I'm fighting someone from a different style. Okay, so I'm testing myself against someone who comes from a different background. They could be studying multiple styles or not. So a judo guy goes up against a karate guy. A boxer goes up against a wrestler. A sumo wrestler could go up against a French kickboxer. You know, it's style versus style. That was the era at the time. So when I was doing that kind of stuff and experiencing style versus style, one of the things that you start to notice is that in that kind of fighting, the clinch occurs. And in the clinch, I mean, the wrestlers definitely had the advantage. I'm talking about like early Randy Couture doing dirty boxing on Vitor Belfort. That was around the time too. That was later in college. But so when I saw stuff like that, it was the wrestlers were getting underhooks and overhooks. And when I fought full contact, the same thing was happening to me. I would get in the clinch and I would get overhooks and underhooks. This was happening all the time. So then I was like, okay, then if I'm going to arm wrench, it needs to happen from there because that's what's happening to me. That's where I end up. So then immediately, overhook, this is your arm wrench right here, okay? Once again, you know, we're grappling like this, so I get the overhook right here and boom, right here. This is wrenching his arm using my body, like so, okay? Underhook right here, boom, this is arm wrench. So if I could straighten out his arm and rest it, see this gap right here, his arm is straight, and I'm popping it down, okay? And preferably against the joint. So I put his arm like I'm putting a branch or something right on my shoulder, and then I'm just dropping my weight on there. So that is from the underhook. So underhook and overhook, to me, those two right there, two more arm wrenches, but they are very, very important because they happen from a clinch situation that is very common. So even though the first three that I showed you guys was important to me, this is the nucleus, at least in my system. So the underhook, overhook, get those two down and then add the three that I showed you. Okay, so that's the way that I do it. Okay, these two are the main. The next thing is, okay, once I started understanding that this is now, because this underhook, overhook comes from wrestling, whether it's Greco-Roman, freestyle, you know, folk, you know, collegiate, Olympic, it comes from wrestling. So now we're talking about grappling. And so then I was like, okay, when I saw, and I'll bring up his name again, the Randy Couture, I was watching him fight, and he was kind of like watching his career through the UFC. He kind of gotten to the point where at some point he was like, submissions are great, but they don't happen that often. And for sure, he has submission losses, but he was like, they're not that commonly, it doesn't happen that common to the point where he almost felt like they were almost obsolete. Now, whether you agree with him or disagree with him, he does have a point, okay, that they're very difficult to do, especially at that level. Or anyone, you know, if someone is as good as you are, it becomes tremendously difficult to get a submission. So then you get a guy who's going for a submission, right? And he wants an arm bar, he wants Americana, Kimura, whatever. He's going for that. And it's 50-50. Either he gets it or he doesn't get it. And if he doesn't get it, it's like all that work kind of for nothing, okay? Now, you can do some damage if it comes very, very close to finishing, but it's either you get it or you don't, right? And if you don't get it, then it's kind of like all that work was a little bit for wasted, a little bit for nothing. Whereas to someone like Randy Couture gets the mount on you, or even the side positions, side mount, and he wants the KO shot. He wants to finish you. But he's doing these small punches to open the doors for bigger. So he's going like body, body, head, right? And then when he gets a chance, boom, right? He's trying to knock you out. But if he doesn't get that opportunity to knock you out, all those little other punches to the body and stuff, they all counted. They all added up. So in that sense, he has the advantage because his finish you or not is not 50-50. He's working his way the whole time. Whereas the submission person, like I said, if you don't get the submission, then it just, you know, you burnt a lot of energy and whatnot. So I was like, why? That sucks for the submission guy. And I was a submission guy at the time. So I was like, why can't I do something kind of like that where all my submission attempts actually count for me? It damages the guy. It all adds up. And that the answer was wrenching. So then, once I understood that, all the joint locks, whether it's on elbow, wrist, shoulder, spinal cord, hip, knee, ankle, even fingers, toes, the neck, you could wrench all of it. And you could wrench standing, you could wrench on the ground. And once I understood that, it changed my game completely. Now I wrench. Well, obviously you can't do it. You know, I can't go to a BJJ gym and start wrenching people. I'll get thrown out. They're going to get really, really angry at me. And I would stir up the hornet's nest. That would be a bad idea. I would get killed. So I wouldn't do it. But for street, why not? Okay. So you have wrenching that could be done the whole thing. Standing and also the ground. And it's changed my game completely. Now that being said, I have seen Tony Chichin's catch wrestling on YouTube, and he says that the hook is the ultimate submission, that it is the knockout punch of submission, right? That, you know, it's more powerful than a submission because you snap it. You don't give them a chance to tap. You immediately snap it. So in that sense, the hook is very, very powerful. What I want you guys to understand is the wrenching here is the total opposite of that. Okay, wrenching is the jab. So you'll have a wrench, a submission, and then a hook. Okay, in that order. So the hook being, let's say it's the best, then you have your submission, and then you have your wrench. Wrench is the lowest, okay? But because it's the lowest, because it's the weakest, easier for me to do. Higher chance. It's like a jab in boxing. I have a much higher chance to land the jab than to land an uppercut and finish the guy and knock out the guy. So with a jab, I can land that. Now, whether that's really going to do damage or not, maybe not, but at least I can land it. It's doable. And that's the important part, okay? So that's how I want you guys to see the wrench, okay? And you can do it repeatedly, just like a jab, repeatedly, and it adds up. And maybe you don't even need to finish the guy. The whole time, all of that counts, and you're taking the fight out of them. And hopefully by that time, they go, you know what, this person, because it's a street, I'm concerned about the street, they go, this is not worth it for me. This is not what I want to be doing. Okay, and if I'm not necessarily being violent with them, you know, I allow them to also save face and go, hey, this was a misunderstanding. Let's just stop, kind of thing. All right, and with the wrench, I believe a lot of times, like people watching and stuff, it doesn't necessarily look super hostile. Like if I demonstrate it here and I go boom, like it looks super violent. But remember, this is a fight. This is on the street. He's coming at me with anger and aggression and whatever, and I'm defending it. And this, it's gonna fit right in. And it doesn't even look like necessarily like I was trying to break his arm. It just looks like I was just trying to get away or something. So in that sense, the wrench legally, I believe, also can help you out. And he's just going to be like, I don't know why, but my elbow's sore, and it's just part of a fight. It's not that I purposely attacked his joint, even though I did. Okay. And last but not least, choke. All the chokes can also be done like a wrench. So this is not on the joint. I mean, the neck is a joint. Of course, the neck is a joint, but normally chokes are attacking the blood and the air, right? But chokes can also be done in a wrenching format. And to show you guys, like the rear naked choke, first of all, with the rear naked choke, what I like about it is I could go, this is my starting right here, which that's not a wrench, but I am hitting the back part of the head and the chin right here, and that might rattle his brain, hopefully fast enough that it knocks him out, but if it doesn't, I don't care. So I'm right here, and that takes me right into the choke. So that's a nice way to start into it. That's how I like to do it, right? I'm not trying to swing my hands in. I go right here and come in like so. So when I come in right here, my bicep and my forearm are going to be hitting him on both sides, right here, and then this arm on top, the forearm blade over here, the outer forearm blade hits. So all three parts of my arm repeatedly hit him, and that's how you can wrench with a choke in the case of a rear naked choke. But anyway, so that's it for now. It's trying to be comprehensive. This is for me everything up to this date, and I don't really necessarily tend to add more because it's not necessarily like the quantity. It's not about the quantity, but I think I already covered that you could wrench all the chokes, you could wrench all the joints, and but those are the main techniques that I personally utilize. And yeah, so I hope I wanted to give you guys and make it very clear what is wrenching and what it's used for, and cite your sources. I tried to do that in this video so you guys know where it came from, where the ideas and stuff came from. But this is all for Filipino martial arts, making the lock flow doable for me in full contact. That was the inspiration there. So that's it for now. Thank you for viewing, and take care, folks.